Hello everybody and welcome back to another not applicable Formula 1 video. I hope that you're well. Ferrari seem to be back. Now, I've been talking to quite a few content creators over the off season and lots of people are touting Ferrari for 2022 success after a terrible 2020 and what was a much better but still not very competitive 2021. Many content creators are talking about Charles Leclerc and Ferrari winning championships this season. And now, personally, I think, swapping Vettel for Sainz was seen as a bit of a downgrade when we came into 2021. I think he has done everything to show that that is anything but a downgrade and actually has driven Ferrari back to where they are. But personally, I think Carlos Sainz gets a little bit of a bad reputation from this and has maybe been slept on a little bit by the community as a whole, because the Formula 1 fan base and everyone I've spoken to has been like, yeah, if Ferrari get this right, it's guaranteed that Charles Leclerc wins his first World Drivers' Championship. Is it? Is Carlos Sainz really not in this conversation whatsoever at all? I mean, Carlos Sainz did manage to actually beat Charles Leclerc last season, and Charles Leclerc, as good as he was, I think is definitely beatable. I think the problem that Carlos Sainz has is, when we talk about Verstappen, Norris, Russell, Leclerc, those four drivers that have all now been put into those four top teams, in my opinion, it is a massive narrative for Formula 1 that those drivers are going to be the four that represent this next generation, this new era of Formula 1. We've got the likes of Lewis Hamilton, Sergio Perez, and Daniel Ricciardo as their teammates that are going to be moving out and into the background. And especially now, I think that George Russell has moved to Mercedes, more and more people are talking about those four as the big four moving forward. And as I just spoke about, Perez, Hamilton, and Ricciardo, fair enough, they are sort of on the way out of Formula 1, you'd imagine, rather than on their way up. But Carlos Sainz, I think Carlos Sainz is on his way up in Formula 1. I think, if we go back to where he started, it's been a really tough come up for Carlos Sainz. He has done a lot in his very few years in Formula 1 and actually, I think could be even better in this 2022 season. He's been progressively getting better over the course of his career. And let me just take you back, actually. 2015, he was in that Toro Rosso car and alongside Max Verstappen was always going to be a tough chore for him to come aside. Max Verstappen still even then was talked about as this next driver for Red Bull, and obviously that's come to fruition now in that he's a World Drivers' Champion in 2021, and Red Bull were probably right to stick all of their eggs in a Max Verstappen-shaped basket. But at the same time, he came up alongside him, was with Verstappen and actually got comparable points to Verstappen in the Toro Rosso team. I think it was just that, Verstappen got that nod a little bit quicker. Verstappen moved up into the Red Bull and Carlos Sainz was still left at the Toro Rosso, meaning he was then alongside Kvyat and then after that, a sort of very fresh-faced Pierre Gasly in the Toro Rosso too. Toro Rosso now being AlphaTauri, I should have probably pointed out. But Carlos Sainz, I think he noticed at that point he was never going to be the Red Bull future like Max Verstappen. He never got that move on into the Red Bull team like Max Verstappen did. So towards the end of that season, actually with 4 races left to go, he moves into the Renault car for those last 4 races in 2017. And alongside Hülkenberg for the 2018 season as well, continues to progress. And I think it's a lot better in that Renault car. Toro Rosso, as good a team as it is, I don't think really gave Sainz the ability to thrive in the same way that Renault then did, and even more so McLaren in the next couple of seasons after that, because he only spent 1 full season at Renault, did Carlos Sainz, and maybe saw the fact that McLaren were on the come up a little bit. There was some slots to go into at McLaren, and he could almost build the McLaren team around him in a slightly different way than he could the Renault team, which had Daniel Ricciardo now moving into it, and Daniel Ricciardo was obviously touted as the future of Renault when he came in. So he has to move again. He's been, annoyingly knocked out of Toro Rosso / Red Bull by Max Verstappen. Then he moves into the Renault car, and Daniel Ricciardo then comes in, and he's like, okay, I'm not going to be the number one here either. So let me move on again to the McLaren team. And I think this is where, we finally saw Carlos Sainz at his best, and he felt very at home in the McLaren team. Whether that's just coming from me as a McLaren fan, I absolutely loved having him in the team for those couple of years. He was exactly what McLaren needed at that time. It felt like he was really comfortable in the McLaren car. Obviously had an incredible relationship with Lando Norris. Picked up a couple of podiums in those seasons as well. One in 2018, one in 2019. And was just looking even better over the course of those seasons. And starting to really take on that mantle as the number one driver in that team. I think with a really young Lando Norris beside him. And personally, I thought that was the perfect spot for Carlos Sainz to be in. I thought Carlos Sainz had found his team. That was going to be it. He was going to be at McLaren for the future. And that was the easy choice, in my opinion, because we've got to remember, when he did decide to make that move to Ferrari, he was replacing Sebastian Vettel. That is a lot of pressure to be putting on a driver moving into a team. And I think it's easier for him to stay at McLaren, but that just shows the mentality shift of Carlos Sainz. And moving into 2021, Ferrari are on an all-time low. They're looking for someone new. They're looking for someone to come in and really sort of shake up the team a little bit. And Carlos Sainz is the man that they pick. Very early on in the season, they decide on bringing Carlos Sainz in. Almost as soon as they, get rid of Sebastian Vettel, they're looking at the drivers available, and Carlos Sainz is the one that they want. And I think they did perfectly to get Carlos Sainz. Obviously, it's huge pressure on Carlos Sainz. He's doing incredibly well at McLaren at the time. Ferrari are an all-time low. The fans are appalled by the team and the fact that they're actually getting rid of Sebastian Vettel, and now he has to try and fill those shoes. It is a very, very tough time if you are Carlos Sainz, because that Seb's departure didn't help at all. The fact that he was coming into a team that had just finished in 6th place, Ferrari were looking like the worst they'd ever possibly been. And obviously Carlos Sainz had already signed his deal by this point, and it was a bit tough, right? Lots of people were actually questioning whether Carlos Sainz had made a mistake in going very early for the Ferrari contract, and not maybe playing out the rest of the season and where Ferrari may end up towards the end of it, because as it turned out, they had one of a very, very poor season indeed, and makes that move to Ferrari. The pressure is now back on him to deliver, because he needs to put in performances where, one, he's displacing Sebastian Vettel, and two, he's bringing Ferrari back up to where he wants to be. And Leclerc, obviously, with that long-term contract, it's clear that Ferrari have pinned their hopes to Charles Leclerc for the future of the team. So Carlos Sainz only gets a 2-year contract, so there is a huge amount of pressure on Carlos Sainz coming into the Ferrari team. And that, for me, just shows how incredibly good he was in that 2021 season. He has all of that to contend with, and he goes and has the best season of his Formula 1 career. Finishes 5th place, 4 podiums along the way, a 2nd place finish and 3 third place finishes. Like, it would have just been exquisite if he could have rounded it out with a win somewhere in the season, but beats his teammate in Charles Leclerc. And now I know people are going to say, yes, he beat Charles Leclerc, but it was very, very close between the two of them, and Charles Leclerc got very unlucky at times this season. And you know what? On pace, Charles Leclerc should have probably, come above Carlos Sainz, but he didn't. Carlos Sainz was always there, and it was just something that actually I talked to CF Racing about when he was on just a week ago now, when you see this video, and he beat Charles Leclerc, yes, but it's the intelligence of Ferrari is the reason why he was able to beat Leclerc in that season, and why he was able to drag Ferrari to the places it got to in terms of 3rd in the Constructors' Championship as well, because they set up the team so that both drivers could achieve. They set up the team so that both drivers had that real opportunity to, whenever Leclerc wasn't quite the one there, wasn't quite able to perform, Carlos Sainz was there to pick up the pieces. And yes, if you look at the average positionings over the course of the season, Charles Leclerc is much better in terms of the consistency of finishing in those points positions, but Carlos Sainz has those 4 podiums to his name. So it balanced out perfectly well between the two. And I've said time and time again, I think they have got by far and away the best driver pairing on the grid. And I think that continues into 2022 as well. Ferrari just got that perfect balance between the two of them. And I think that balance comes from the fact that Carlos Sainz's mentality is so incredibly good compared to everybody else on the grid. Now, I think this is something that Drive to Survive actually shows really, really well. And I know I'm going to get slated because I am not a Drive to Survive fan only. I've watched Formula 1, I promise. But Drive to Survive does show that mentality that Carlos Sainz has. Obviously, everyone in Formula One, all the drivers on the grid have that winner's mentality, that elite sporting mentality that you need to get to the top of any sport, especially Formula One, where there are only 20 seats available to you. You have to have just a different mindset to most human beings on the planet. But Carlos Sainz's level and character and understanding of how he can get the most out of his own driving is just on another level to me above that. It's just incredible to see that, he's not a generational talent like Verstappen. He's not, lightning quick in qualifying like a Russell. He doesn't have those pure magic moments like Charles Leclerc does. But what he does do is everything behind the scenes, visiting the factory, getting to know the teams. I think, Drive to Survive really showed how much he dedicated to McLaren at the time. He was there for every single thing McLaren did, and everything went through him. It felt like he was part of the entire infrastructure of McLaren. It felt like he had a say in everything that the team did. And I think we're getting to that point with Ferrari as well, where he knows the team inside out. He's visiting the factory. He's in Italy all of the time. He's getting to know everything that he can about the Ferrari family to get as much information as he possibly can. And that is a huge asset for Carlos Sainz. Because as I said, he isn't going to outdrive some of these drivers on the grid. But what he can do is understand the fundamentals of everything that is going on in the grid to such a level that nobody else is on with him. And that is the only thing I think that's made him flourish. It's matured. It's come to fruition over those course of the seasons. The fact he was in lots of different teams, the fact he's seen lots of different processes. He was at Toro Rosso, had a little bit of disappointment, was at Renault, similar sort of maybe disappointment that he wasn't able to be the number one there, came to McLaren, made it his own, dragged McLaren back from the brink of just obscurity basically between him and Lando Norris, and then moves to Ferrari, the biggest team on the grid, and just shows again that he has that quality, has that understanding, and can do it at the top level of the grid. For me, at times, I know in the season, I've even said myself in this video, he was unlucky that Leclerc had those incidents. He was unlucky that lots of people are talking about the fact that Leclerc should have finished in front of him. Leclerc was better on pace. Leclerc had a better season. I think personally, we should turn that around a little bit. Can we not see that as a positive for Carlos Sainz, in that every single time Charles Leclerc wasn't able to deliver, whether that was a crash or an incident like Hungary where he was involved in something, that was completely out of his hands, but Carlos Sainz picked up a podium, or even when he made that tyre mistake in Russia, Carlos Sainz picks up a podium. Carlos Sainz made these for himself. I think the luck that Carlos Sainz maybe got compared to Charles Leclerc was due to those influences that he had behind the scenes, due to that mentality, due to that understanding of Formula One and the car that was in front of him. Now, obviously moving into 2022, which is what I'll touch on last, is Ferrari are not in the perfect position. Ferrari have issues behind the scenes, and there are still things that need to get better. And Carlos Sainz, obviously, having one season in Ferrari is not going to make you a stalwart of Ferrari. It's not going to put him in that number one seat. I still think that Charles Leclerc is probably favoured by lots of Ferrari fans, and also possibly the Ferrari team behind the scenes as well. He is kind of Mr. Ferrari after all. After giving him that huge contract, I think Charles Leclerc does stand out as that person that they want to build on for the future. But at the same time, if Ferrari are able to produce a car, if Ferrari as a team are able to make it so that they are the fastest car on the grid, and let's face it, they should be able to with the infrastructure that they have at Ferrari behind the scenes, I think the battle between Leclerc and Sainz is going to be much closer than many believe. I think, lots of people have said if Ferrari do it, Leclerc will be first, and then, Carlos Sainz will be down in third, fourth, fifth. I genuinely think that Carlos Sainz has shown he always improves when it comes to Formula One. He's improved every single season up to this point, and he's just getting quicker and better. And I think it is down to that mentality, and that maturing mentality that he's got just brings another facet to his driving every single year. He always improves. I think he's going to be so much closer. He's willing to score points. He can score points. He can score podiums. We've seen it this season that he can get back-to-back podiums. He can get 4 podiums in a season. Why not extend that a little bit further? Why not say he can get 10 or 15 podiums in a season? Maybe he can if he's given the correct car. And yes, we haven't seen him win a race yet, but I think he does still have that ability to win a race. I think he's just been unlucky at times that, you know, when he has picked up those podiums, there hasn't really been the opportunity for him to win a race in front of him. He's never really given that opportunity because of the cars he's been in, because of the teams he's been in. So he's shown he can outscore Leclerc in one season, yes, with a little bit of luck on his side. Why can he not do that again? Why can people not understand that Charles Leclerc winning the championship if Ferrari have the best car is not a guarantee? I think Carlos Sainz is going to be right up there until the end of the season. And if Charles Leclerc does win this championship, I think it's going to be Carlos Sainz in second place. I think genuinely he can go toe-to-toe with Charles Leclerc in every single facet of his driving. I think Charles Leclerc has that little bit of magic. Carlos Sainz has that mentality, that drive, that understanding that just separates him, in my opinion, from the majority of the rest of the grid. I think it's something that we don't see in drivers that are of his age. He seems like a very, very solid head for quite a young driver in terms of Formula One. And yes, he's a lot older than those Verstappens, Russells, Norrises, Leclercs, but still has so much to offer left in his career. And genuine, I think, is going to get better and better and better. If Ferrari put together the best car on the grid for the 2022 season, it's difficult to say Charles Leclerc versus Carlos Sainz, but I wouldn't not say Carlos Sainz, I think, is the main thing I'm trying to put across here. It's going to be close between the two of them. I'd love to know your thoughts, though. Carlos Sainz versus Charles Leclerc in the comments down below. If Ferrari are able to get this right, who will put together the best season? Can Carlos Sainz become that Ferrari championship winner, the first championship winner since 2007? That would be absolutely stunning. Thank you guys so much for watching this. Leave a like if you are new. No, subscribe if you are new. Leave a like just if in general. Just always leave a like. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time.